not every single one seed is going to advance to the Final Four. Sure, a couple usually do. I think the average is like 1.9 one seeds that advance to the Final Four. So we do see some shock, but some of those other seeds, they can be ripe for the picking. So we'll see. And that's another thing. As much as we talk about these teams, I do think that it's important to wait until the bracket comes out because so much of it is matchups. So we can talk all we want about some of these teams. And I will say, Auburn and Duke certainly look matchup proof against just about anybody, but the bracket will make a difference if we're talking about some of these, long shot teams who we're going to pick to get in the Final Four.
Yeah, for sure. And the odds are going to change, maybe not significantly. That probably isn't the right word, but they're going to change from where we are right now. Like Houston plus 750 to win the title. If they're in a bracket that pins them, if they are if they end up being a number 2, and are somehow in the same bracket as Auburn, like that number is going to change significantly. Auburn's number might even get a little longer because the Houston is such a tough team. So it is matchup dependent, but if you want those big numbers for title winners, you do kind of have to jump on some of those prior to the bracket coming out and just hope that you get a solid lie for whatever your team is in terms of where they're situated in the bracket. But once that bracket comes out, then you look at the matchups and the path to getting to the Final Four, to getting to the national championship, and can bet on things that way.
Yeah. So over the weekend, we did have 3 power conference teams securing outright regular season titles. Auburn, one of those, now just plus 325 to win it all over at BetMGM, and Houston in Big 12 plus 750 to win the national championship, as you referenced to. And in the Big East, what a throwback. It's St. John's that wins the Big East for the first time since 1985. What a story St. John's has been this year with Rick Pitino, some of the storylines coming out of their team. And the craziest part is they're one of the worst teams at shooting the 3-point shot, but still one of the best offenses in the Big East, which is a testament to how good their rebounding is, especially their offensive rebounding and their defense. And for teams like that, like if they're actually hitting threes, it almost feels like they're unbeatable. And we saw Bobby Hurley was saying that, when UConn lost to St. John's, they said, hey, St. John's was hitting threes and they already rebound, get all these second chance looks. They're really tough to beat when they're hitting those 3-point shots. But they're certainly going to be a team with a lot of hype going into March Madness.
Yeah, I mean, they have the second best offense in the entire country behind Houston. You talk about offensive rebounding. They're 11th in the country in offensive rebound percentage. So not only are they getting a lot of second chance points, they're getting their free throw shooting actually is not that great, their percentage, but they're getting to the line. Like those are things in March that you want to look at is a team shooting a lot of free throws? Are they getting offensive rebounds, which goes, adds extra possessions? Are they able to turn you over while they are good at not turning the ball over? So limited possessions for the other team, an extra possession or two for your team. Those are things that I like to look at going into the tournament, but it has been a long time since St. John's was relevant in any manner. And, Patino's done a great job of turning that around. I, Chelsa, am someone who loves like sports documentaries or biographies. The Vice Sports documentary about St. John's and Rick Pitino this season that they've been recording throughout the year, when I don't know if that's come out yet or if they're releasing episodes, week by week. Once the season's over, I'll go back and watch that if it is in fact out. But that's something that'll be very interesting to see, just kind of how he's handled this program this year, turning it around so quickly because he's done a phenomenal job. And St. John's is a team that going into March is someone that I want to bet on. Maybe not to make the Final Four, maybe not to win the title, but I think an Elite 8 appearance is certainly in the cards for St. John's this season.
Yeah, it feels like when we try to predict winners of March Madness, which I will go on the record and say I feel like it's the hardest championship to predict just because of the format. And, we call it March Madness for a reason. But I'll say this. It does feel like you bank on teams that have really good head coaches because that's what we've seen in this recent history. Because, look at the list. We have Dan Hurley back-to-back, Bill Self, Scott Drew over at Baylor, Tony Bennett, Jay Wright, Roy Williams, Jay Wright, Coach K, Kevin Ollie, Rick Pitino, John Calipari, Jim Calhoun. The list goes on and on. It is all these big name head coaches, which makes me think, okay, if I'm going to pick a team to win the national championship, they need to have one of those really solid head coaches, because this is the ultimate test for teams. Not only do you have to have the talent, you have to have, the mental toughness to get through March Madness, and you have to be on your absolute A game every single game of the tournament. So as much as people love Cinderella stories, doesn't feel like it's the case when you're talking about overall winners.
Yeah, not for overall winners. I would say FAU making that deep run a couple of seasons ago. San Diego State, that was a team that, I mean, they didn't win the title, but made it there. Like, they were the clear underdog throughout the tournament in well, couple of those games. They were a solid team, but they didn't have one of those blue blood coaches that we talk about. Going into the tournament this year, Gonzaga has not been as dominant as they have in previous seasons, but you still have Mark Few, who has an incredible tournament record just in terms of making it to Sweet 16s, Elite 8s, like going deep into the tournament. The Zags are top they're 8th in adjusted net rating on KenPom right now. So they're still, despite not having the record that they typically have, 23-8 this season, they're still a very good team. Same with Michigan State. And Michigan State's been phenomenal lately. They've won 5 straight, but you have Tom Izzo, who is Mr. March. Like, regardless of the talent, regardless of the record of Michigan State going into the tournament, they're always someone you can count on. So it is those big time coaches that have been here before that know what they're doing and are able to get the most out of their team come this time. Those are the teams you want to look to back.
Yeah, I think a good March Madness bet team for me has like this recipe. You need a good head coach, a great head coach, I should probably say. You need a team that's balanced, because we've seen this trend, I think, over the past like 15 years, that it's been a team that's not only a top ranked offense when it comes to KenPom, you're also at least in like the top 50 of defense. So that kind of takes a lot of the teams out of the mix, that you have to be balanced. Like, we know that defense usually travels, but you also need a high end offense. You can't just be on one side of the ball or the other. You have to be the complete team. And the other thing that maybe is the X factor, I do think you need good guard play. You need that guard that can take over the basketball in the last 30 seconds of the game and take over things when need be. So we see this with some of these teams who are playing in wire-to-wire games. And also, like, obviously you look at the top-tier teams, Cooper Flagg obviously can do that for Duke, and Janai Broome can obviously do that for Auburn. But I'll say this, I feel like Auburn is so deep that even if Janai Broome is not in the game, we've seen Auburn win some of these big matchups in the SEC against ranked opponents. So maybe they're not quite as reliant on Janai Broome, but I do think you need that player that has the top end talent at the end of the game to take things over.
Well, you look at Auburn's most recent game beating Kentucky. They won handedly. They won 94-78, yet Janai Broome only had 9 points. He shot under 30% from the field. He played 33 minutes. He was on the court for most of that game and still finished with only 9 points. But what else did he do? He had 6 rebounds. He had 3 steals. He had an assist. Like, he was doing things outside of scoring and allowing his teammates to kind of pick up the slack. That's the type of thing that you want to see, is your team having success when your star player is not having success, and you still beat a very good Kentucky team by almost 20 points. That's a great sign for Auburn going into the tournament, because there might be a game or two where Janai Broome is just not on, or the defensive focus is even more heightened on him in some of these games. So those are teams, again, that even with the star players, their supporting cast, their role players, their secondary player are still able to step up. Those are also teams you want to look at going into March.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll say this as well. I feel like some of these conference tournaments, you need to pay attention to some of the teams that have momentum. Because as somebody who went to NC State, look at what happened with my NC State Wolfpack just last season.
Yeah.
A team that was underachieving the entire year, and then they rolled through the ACC tournament. Even one of those games, I think it was against Virginia, it took like almost a buzzer beater shot to win that game. And they just rolled through the tournament simply on vibes. It felt like, even if you look at the guys who played for NC State last year, like, most of them are playing overseas. I don't think a single one is playing in the NBA. So keep your eyes peeled for that in some of these conference tournaments, because we can talk about these odds right now all we want. But when it comes to those teams that are going to be the Cinderellas, I feel like this is the time to see where that momentum lies and to see who really has it going into March.
Well, I'm excited, Chelsea, to see who is the Jack Golke of this season because, like your NC
Mm.
State Wolfpack, there's always a team that is unexpectedly going deep into the tournament. There's also a
Mhm.
player who is the unexpected star of the tournament or the darling of the tournament. I mean, last year, Jack Golke of Oakland, who first round of the tournament, 10 threes and beat Kentucky, who was supposed to make a deep run in Coach Cal's final year there. And I mean, that was phenomenal. And he's still a name that people talk about. I mean, a year later of like, who is going to be the next Jack Golke? That's what makes the tournament so fun, are those teams that are unexpected and go deep, and the players that arise in these big time moments and then are talked about as like a hero forever. I don't think Jack Golke ever has had this much attention on him in his career than when he hit 10 threes and beat Kentucky to send Oakland to the second round of the tournament. Like those are the phenomenal storylines that we crave as sports fans.
Well, and as much as we talk about volatility from teams that shoot the three ball as, some of the top dogs and like some of the favorites, if you're an underdog and you're one of these smaller school teams, it feels like the ultimate equalizer are teams that can shoot the three ball. Because it feels like in the game of basketball, if you're hot from the 3 point line, the other team can't guard the three.
Yeah.
That's how you contend with these other teams that are way taller than you and have way more size down low, and they have the blue chip prospects. If you just go on a stretch where you're just unreal from the 3 point line, we see this on a nightly basis, it feels like in college hoops, where there's a team that's not supposed to win, but they shoot the lights out. And sometimes all you can do is throw up your hand and say, well, it was their night. But, that's the way that March Madness is constructed. All you have to do is win that one game and you survive and advance.